Admiral Lee watched the distant stars through the council chamber's viewport. For 50 years, humanity had worked alongside alien species in the Galactic Council. They had shared technology, established trade routes, and built diplomatic relationships. But something had always felt wrong to Lee: the subtle condescension, the restrictive policies that seemed to affect only human expansion. Today confirmed her worst fears. "Play it again," she whispered to Commander Park, who stood nervously beside her. Park activated the small holographic projector. The encrypted transmission flickered to life, showing Council Speaker Tejo in private conversation with representatives from the 7 dominant species. "Humanity advances too quickly," Tejo was saying. "Their adaptive capabilities exceed all projections. If we don't implement containment protocols now, they'll achieve technological parity within a decade." The Vorax representatives' mandibles clicked in agreement. The economic sanctions must begin immediately. Resource restrictions first, then gradually increase military presence in their expansion zones. Lee's fingers tightened around the railing as she listened to beings she'd considered allies calmly discuss the subjugation of her species. The evidence was undeniable: the Council had never seen humans as equals, only as potential threats to be managed. "How did we obtain this?" she asked Park. "One of our deep cover operatives intercepted it during routine maintenance of the quantum communication array," Park explained. "They've been planning this for years." A flash of energy suddenly scorched the wall beside them. Lee reacted instantly, pulling Park down as security alarms blared throughout the station. The assassination attempt was clumsy but telling: someone knew they had discovered the truth. "They're moving faster than we expected," Lee said as they crawled toward the exit. Council security forces would be searching for them within minutes. Park touched his wrist communicator. "The shuttle is prepped. We have a narrow launch window before they lock down all departures." As they rushed through the corridors of the massive space station, Lee noticed how quickly the alien staff cleared from their path. Not helping, not hindering, simply removing themselves from what was about to become a diplomatic incident. "They already know," she realized. "This isn't just the leadership. They've all been briefed." Their diplomatic shuttle waited in the auxiliary bay. The pilot, Lieutenant Su, had the engines already warming when they arrived. "Admiral, we're being denied departure clearance," she reported. "Override protocols," Lee ordered. "Emergency departure sequence." As the shuttle broke free from the station, 3 Council patrol vessels moved to intercept. "They're charging weapons," Park announced. Lee nodded calmly. "Activate the phase shift protocol." The experimental technology had never been field tested, but they had no choice. The shuttle briefly shimmered before disappearing from conventional space, reappearing 50,000 kilometers away. "It worked," Sue said, her voice tinged with relief and wonder. "Setting course for Earth." During the journey home, Lee reviewed the evidence they'd gathered. The Council's betrayal wasn't spontaneous, it had been planned since humanity's first contact. Earth had always been seen as a potential threat to the established order, a species that evolved too quickly, adapted too readily. 3 days later, their shuttle approached Earth's defense perimeter. Dozens of warships had already been mobilized. Someone had warned Earth's leadership about the developing situation. President Kim was waiting when Lee's shuttle docked at the orbital command station. His face was grave as she presented the evidence. "We've received similar reports from our other ambassadors," he confirmed. "The Council has frozen all human assets in their territories. Trade ships are being detained. Colony worlds are reporting Council warships entering their systems." Lee took a deep breath. "Then we have no choice. We must activate the contingency protocol." The President's expression hardened. "Are you certain?" "I've seen enough to know they won't stop at economic sanctions. This is an existential threat." Kim nodded slowly. "Then it's time the Council learns why attempting to cage humanity was their greatest mistake." He turned to his staff. "Send the activation sequence to Jupiter Station. Authorization code, Artemis Rising." Deep within Jupiter's swirling atmosphere, hidden from Council observation for 20 years, something massive stirred to life. Humanity had prepared for this betrayal longer than anyone could have guessed. As emergency sessions convened across Earth, Admiral Lee stood before the United Earth Defense Council. The Council believed they were dealing with a minor species they could gradually suppress, she told the assembled leaders. They never suspected we've been building our response since the day we joined their alliance. In Jupiter's clouds, lights began to glow as humanity's greatest secret awakened. 20 years earlier, Director Kong stood on the observation deck of Jupiter Station, watching as thousands of workers moved across the skeletal frame of what would become humanity's greatest achievement. The massive construction project remained invisible to outside observers, hidden within the giant planet's turbulent atmosphere. Special energy fields kept the crushing pressures and toxic gases at bay while allowing the work to continue uninterrupted. "How are we progressing?" asked the woman who had just entered the room. Kong turned to see Secretary Jean, the project's political overseer and one of only 12 people on Earth who knew the full scope of what they were building. "Ahead of schedule," Kong replied. "The outer hull is nearly 70% complete. The biosphere sections are growing well." They both gazed out at the enormous structure. Even unfinished, Artemis was breathtaking, stretching 50 kilometers from end to end, shaped like an elongated arrowhead with multiple cylindrical sections rotating slowly to create gravity within. "Do you still believe this is necessary?" Jean asked quietly. Kong nodded without hesitation. The council species have existed in their current power structures for thousands of years. They don't understand rapid change. Humanity goes from horse-drawn carriages to space travel in less than a century? They see us as unpredictable. Dangerous. And this is our insurance policy. More than that, Kong said. Artemis isn't just a warship. It's a lifeboat for our entire civilization if needed. Now, 2 decades later, President Kim stood in Earth's central command center as the activation signal reached Jupiter. Massive vents opened in the gas giant's upper atmosphere, releasing controlled bursts of pressure that had been building for months. The surrounding clouds parted as planned, revealing what had been hidden for so long. Artemis rose from its birthplace, shedding the last construction scaffolding as it accelerated upward. Sunlight touched its hull for the first time, gleaming off surfaces made from materials unknown to Council science. The vessel dwarfed anything previously built by any species, not just in size but in the ambition it represented. "My God," whispered one of the generals watching the live feed. "We actually built it." On the Council homeworld, emergency alarms sounded as long-range sensors detected the massive object emerging from Jupiter. Ambassador Song sat calmly as alien officials rushed around him in growing panic. The Supreme Counselor, a tall being with iridescent scales, confronted him directly. "What is that thing, human? What have you done?" Song smiled slightly. "Insurance. Something we hoped never to need. It's a weapon of mass destruction." "No," Song corrected. "It's a guarantee that humanity will never be exterminated or enslaved. There's a difference." Aboard the newly awakened vessel, Captain Bay walked through corridors that stretched for kilometers. After years of training in simulators, she was finally seeing Artemis with her own eyes. The ship hummed with life, both mechanical and biological. Entire sections were dedicated to self-sustaining ecosystems, complete with forests, lakes, and agricultural zones. "Status report," she ordered as she entered the bridge. Commander Du turned from his station. "All systems online. The biomechanical computer core is fully responsive. Defensive systems are calibrated and ready." Bay nodded and touched the command chair's interface. Holographic displays sprang to life around her, showing the positions of Council ships already moving to blockade Earth and its colonies. "Begin Phase 1, she ordered. "Deploy scout units to all human settlements. Priority evacuation for outer colonies first." Within hours, reports flooded in of Council forces approaching human worlds. On New Busan, the colony's 3 million inhabitants watched in fear as alien warships entered orbit. Governor Yoon had just begun organizing emergency shelters when the sky rippled strangely. Space itself seemed to fold as Artemis appeared in orbit, dwarfing the Council vessels. Its smooth hull opened in multiple sections, revealing cavernous bays filled with smaller craft already launching toward the surface. "They're ours," Yoon told the stunned colonists. Earth sent help. Similar scenes played out across human space as Artemis deployed transportation vessels using technology the Council had never seen, the ability to fold space itself for near-instantaneous travel between distant points. On Earth, Admiral Lee received the first reports of successful evacuations. "The Council thought they had us trapped," she told President Kim. "They never imagined we could move our people so quickly." "And when they try to stop us?" Kim asked. Lee's expression hardened. "Then they'll discover that Artemis has other capabilities. We built her to save lives, but she can defend herself if needed." As if to prove her point, a tactical display showed a Council battle group approaching Artemis near Alpha Centauri. The massive ship simply absorbed their weapon fire, its advanced shields converting the energy into power for its own systems. Humanity's response to Betrayal had only just begun. The Council flagship Dominant will drop out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the new Busan system. Commander Gill of the Council forces had expected to find a panicked human colony preparing hasty defenses. Instead, his sensors showed something impossible. "Report," he demanded, staring at the massive form of Artemis hanging in orbit around the colony world. "The human vessel is approximately 50 kilometers in length," his sensor officer replied, voice trembling. "Our weapons cannot penetrate its defensive fields. And sir, the colony appears to be evacuating." Below on the planet's surface, Governor Yoon watched as the last transport ships loaded with colonists ascended toward Artemis's open docking bays. What should have taken weeks was happening in mere hours, thanks to the massive carrier's fleet of shuttles. "How many more?" Yoon asked his aide. "Less than 2,000 remaining," she replied. "We're ahead of schedule." In orbit, the Council vessels moved closer, weapons charged. The lead destroyer fired a warning shot across Artemis's bow. The energy beam simply disappeared into the strange, rippling shields that surrounded the human vessel. Captain Bay stood calmly on Artemis's bridge as the Council ships approached. "Last transport is secured," reported her operations officer. "All colonists are aboard. Prepare fold space jump to Proxima Colony," she ordered. "And deploy defensive countermeasures." From Artemis's hull, hundreds of small objects launched toward the Council fleet. They weren't weapons, merely specialized drones that attached themselves to the alien vessels. When activated, they temporarily disabled the ship's main power systems without causing permanent damage. Commander Gill watched in helpless rage as his flagship's lights dimmed and weapon systems went offline. By the time emergency power activated, Artemis had vanished completely, taking the entire human population of New Busan with it. This scene repeated across human space. At Proxima Colony, at Europa Station, at the mining outposts of Tau Ceti, everywhere Council forces expected to find trapped human settlements, they instead found Artemis arriving just ahead of them, evacuating the populations, and disappearing before effective opposition could be mounted. On the Council capital world, emergency sessions continued without pause as reports flooded in of the impossible vessel that seemed able to appear anywhere at will. "How are they doing this?" demanded the Supreme Counselor. "No known technology allows such movement." The science advisor spread his hands helplessly. "They must have developed fold space technology far beyond our own capabilities. Our vessels require hours to calculate a single jump. This human ship seems to make jumps in minutes, even when carrying thousands of passengers." In a private chamber, representatives from the 7 major Council species met in secret. "The containment plan has failed," stated the Vorex delegate bluntly. "We must move directly to military action before they consolidate their forces." At Earth's Lunar Command Center, Admiral Lee received updates as Artemis completed its evacuation missions. "Phase 1 complete," she announced to President Kim and the Joint Defense Council. "All outer colonies evacuated. Artemis reports 97% success rate with minimal casualties." "And Phase 2?" asked the President. Lee's expression hardened. "Council forces are massing at 3 staging points. They're preparing for a direct assault on the Sol system. Then it's time to show them Artemis isn't merely a transport vessel," said Defense Minister Ryu. Captain Bay has authorization to deploy combat systems if attacked. At the edge of human space, the Council's 7th Fleet assembled over 200 warships preparing to push toward Earth. Admiral Tun, the fleet commander, felt confident despite reports of the strange human vessel. Nothing could stand against such concentrated firepower. Space distorted as Artemis appeared directly in the fleet's path. This time, instead of fleeing, the massive vessel's hull reconfigured, sections sliding apart to reveal what looked like crystalline formations embedded within its structure. "They're powering weapons," shouted Tun's tactical officer. "All ships, open fire," Tun ordered. The combined firepower of 200 Council vessels converged on Artemis. Its shields flared brilliantly but held firm. Then the crystalline structures pulsed. What followed wasn't the devastation Tun had expected. Instead, precision energy beams struck specific systems on each Council vessel. Weapons, engines, and communication arrays went offline. Not destroyed, merely disabled. "This is Captain Bay of the Earth vessel Artemis," came a transmission across all channels. "Your ships are disabled but your life support remains functional. We have no desire for casualties. Stand down and prepare for evacuation to the nearest Council outpost." As Council crews were transferred to escape vessels, Tun was brought aboard Artemis. Captain Bay met him personally. "Why not destroy us?" Tun asked. "You clearly have the capability." "Because we're not like you," Bay replied simply. "We don't eliminate those we see as threats. We just ensure they can't harm us." Throughout Council space, the news spread quickly. Humanity wasn't seeking revenge, they were demonstrating power without unnecessary bloodshed. It was a strategy no one had anticipated. Commander J stood on the observation deck of Artemis, watching the formerly barren planet below transform before his eyes. 3 days ago, this world had been an uninhabitable rock with toxic atmosphere and extreme temperatures. Now, spreading across its surface like a living tide, Artemis's terraforming systems were creating a miracle. "Atmospheric composition approaching Earth standard," reported Science Officer Min beside him. "The engineered microorganisms are multiplying at projected rates. Within 2 weeks, the air will be breathable." Similar transformations were happening across 7 previously uninhabitable systems, all positioned strategically beyond Council space. Each would soon support the displaced human colonies evacuated during Artemis's first missions. "Is this why the Council feared us so much?" Jay wondered aloud. Min nodded thoughtfully. "They've spent thousands of years making tiny, careful adjustments to dead worlds to make them habitable. We're doing it in days." On a neutral trading station near the borders of Council space, Admiral Lee sat across from representatives of 3 previously neutral species. The Latari, Vex, and Moro had all requested this secret meeting after witnessing Artemis in action. "We've observed your vessel's capabilities," said the Latari diplomat, her translucent fins rippling with interest. "It could have destroyed the Council fleet, yet you disabled them with minimal casualties." Lee nodded. "Artemis wasn't built primarily as a weapon. It represents what we call the Artemis Doctrine. Survival without domination, defense without aggression." She activated a small projector showing Artemis transforming barren worlds into habitable ones. "We don't need to take worlds from others. We can create our own." The Vex representative, a crystalline being who communicated through light patterns, flashed rapidly. The translator rendered, "The Council told all species that humans were dangerous expansionists who would eventually threaten everyone. This seems contrary to that claim. We only wanted equal treatment and honest cooperation," Lee explained. "When the Council planned to contain and eventually subjugate us, we revealed our contingency." Within the Council chambers, unity was fracturing. 7 minor species had already formally withdrawn from the alliance. Reports of Artemis's capabilities, especially its terraforming technology, had spread throughout civilized space. "The humans must be stopped before more species defect," insisted the Vorex representative, pounding his armored fist on the table. The Tahoe Supreme Counselor seemed less certain. "Their vessel has disabled 12 of our fleets without destroying a single ship. They're evacuating their colonies to new worlds they're creating beyond our borders. This is not the behavior of conquerors. It's worse, growled the Vorix. They're showing the galaxy they don't need us. That they can create what we've spent millennia building. On Earth, President Kim addressed the global parliament as reports arrived from the frontier. Artemis has successfully established all emergency colony sites, he announced. For the first time in our history, humanity exists independently of both Earth and Council space. Defense Minister Ryu added, Council military operations against our remaining positions have completely ceased. Their last attack group retreated after Artemis demonstrated its deep space fold capabilities. They now understand we can respond to threats anywhere in their territory within minutes. Back aboard Artemis, Captain Bay received an unexpected transmission. The message came directly from the Council's inner chambers, a request for dialogue. They want to negotiate, she told her bridge crew. After everything, they're asking for talks. Commander Du looked skeptical. Is it genuine or a trap? Bay studied the message carefully. It's from the Tejo Supreme Counselor personally. According to intelligence, he's leading the moderate faction that wants to avoid further conflict. And the hardliners? Finding themselves increasingly isolated, they replied. 7 more species have requested meetings to discuss leaving the Council and joining what they're calling the Human Alliance. She allowed herself a small smile. We never wanted an alliance under our control. We just wanted fair treatment. On the newly established colony of New Terra, Governor Yoon watched with pride as the first permanent structures rose from the rich soil that just weeks ago had been lifeless rock. The terraforming process had accelerated beyond even the most optimistic projections. The settlers are calling it a miracle, said his aide. Yoon shook his head. Not a miracle. Just human ingenuity freed from constraints. A child ran past, laughing as she chased a butterfly, one of the thousands of species brought aboard Artemis as part of Earth's biological heritage. The insect's wings caught the light of an alien sun that now nurtured human life. This is what the Council truly feared, Yoon realized. Not our weapons or our ships, but our ability to thrive anywhere, to transform worlds in our image. Above, Artemis hung in orbit, its massive form catching the sunlight. The vessel had already become something more than a ship or weapon in the minds of humans and aliens alike. It was a symbol of a new approach to galactic relations, one that didn't require conquest or submission, but creation and self-sufficiency. The Artemis Doctrine was rewriting the future of the galaxy. Centauri Prime had never seen anything like it. The Council capital world's orbital space was filled with ships from 30 different species, former enemies and allies alike, gathering for what many were already calling the Dawn Conference. But all attention focused on the massive form of Artemis as it emerged from fold space directly above the Council Tower. They're here, whispered Supreme Counselor Tejo, watching from the Grand Chamber's observation dome. The human vessel dwarfed everything around it, hanging in the sky like a metal continent. Unlike previous appearances, this time Artemis arrived not as a threat but as an invited guest. Admiral Lee stepped off her shuttle into the Council's central chamber. The room had been reconfigured, the old hierarchical arrangement replaced by a circular table where all representatives sat as equals. It was the first visible sign that things had truly changed. Welcome to Centauri Prime, Admiral, Tejo greeted her formally. We are prepared to begin the treaty discussions. Lee nodded, taking her seat. Earth appreciates this opportunity for a fresh start. Representatives from 29 species filed in, many from worlds that had been Council members for millennia, others from independent systems drawn by news of the historic meeting. The Vorix delegation was noticeably absent. They had withdrawn to their home systems after their calls for military action against humans had been rejected. Before we begin, Lee said once all were seated, I want to be clear about humanity's position. We don't seek to replace the Council or establish dominance. We propose a true alliance of equals. The chamber filled with the various sounds of different species signaling agreement. On Earth, President Kim watched the proceedings via secure transmission. Defense Minister Ryu stood beside him, his expression cautious. Do you think it will work? Ryu asked. Kim nodded slowly. They've seen what we can do. More importantly, they've seen what we choose not to do. Artemis could have destroyed their fleets, bombarded their worlds. Instead, we disabled their ships and sent their crews home safely. The Artemis Doctrine in action, Ryu acknowledged. At the conference, Lee presented humanity's proposal, the dissolution of the old council and the creation of a new galactic alliance founded on principles of technological sharing, territorial respect, and collaborative development of resources. The old system was built on controlling access to habitable worlds and key resources, she explained. With terraforming technology widely shared, that scarcity disappears. We can all have room to grow without conflict. The Latari representative spoke next. My species has observed how quickly the human colonies are thriving on their newly transformed worlds. If this technology were shared, it will be, Lee confirmed. Along with our fold space transportation systems. No world need be isolated or vulnerable again. Over the next 3 days, the framework for the new alliance took shape. The former council headquarters would be transformed into a collaborative research and diplomatic center. Technology sharing would be mandatory for all members. Military forces would be maintained independently but coordinated through joint command structures during crises. Most significantly, Artemis itself would become the physical center of the new alliance, its massive hull reconfiguring to create a permanent station in orbit around Centauri Prime. This vessel represents the best of what humanity can create, Lee told the assembly during the final session. We built it in secret, fearing we would need it for war. Instead, it will now serve as the foundation for peace. 1 solar year later, the transformation was complete. Artemis had extended massive docking arms to accommodate ships from dozens of species. Its internal spaces had been reconfigured to create environments suitable for all Alliance members. At its core, the first classes of the Galactic Science Academy were beginning, with faculty from 18 species teaching students from even more. In a private observation lounge overlooking the bustling Central Plaza, President Kim met with Admiral Lee for the first time since the treaty signing. It's more than I ever imagined possible, Kim admitted, watching members of formerly hostile species mingling freely below. Lee nodded. Artemis was our insurance against extinction. Now it's becoming something much more important. There's still the matter of the other vessels, Kim said quietly. Deep within Neptune's atmosphere, a structure similar to Artemis remained hidden. 2 more waited in distant gas giants of other star systems, contingencies within contingencies, the full extent of humanity's preparation for the worst. Perhaps someday they'll join their sister here, Lee replied. But for now, let's keep that particular card hidden. Kim smiled slightly. Artemis has already changed everything. The council thought they were containing a dangerous species. Instead, they forced us to reveal our true nature. And what is that? Lee asked. Builders, Kim said simply, gesturing to the thriving station around them. When given the choice between destruction and creation, we will always choose to create. Below them, the first generation of the new alliance continued to take shape, different species working together under the watchful protection of humanity's greatest achievement, not as conquerors but as architects of a better future.